And we're live, and that's great. Again, this is a very small channel. I'm not expecting lots of people to come watch, but this video will be here for you whenever you're interested. Good. So, of course, I'll take any questions you have, anything you want to know about English, any comments on anything that's going on, and that's just fine. Anything you want to ask on any topic is fine. But I'm going to start, at least today, by talking about Bernie Sanders. Now, for those of you who don't know who Bernie Sanders is, he was he is. He's still alive. He's a politician in the United States. And he's supposed to be very left-wing. Now, if you don't know what it means to be left-wing, that's okay. I've made one or two videos on it you can check out on my channel, but if not, I could maybe explain. Left-wing it means a lot of things, and it's not easy to say exactly what it means, but basically it means that people care more about everyone and having everyone have, say, for example, equal access to healthcare. So that, the way things are now in the United States and maybe where you live, I don't know. If you're poor, if you don't have any money, it's very hard for you to get healthcare, to get treatment for some health problem, whatever health problem you have. Certainly in the United States, it's very, very expensive. Like amazing, like hard for someone like me to believe. I've never lived in the United States, so I don't have that problem. But so if you're on the left, you would say that everyone should have access to healthcare, if you're at least far enough on the left. Whereas people on the right might say, if you don't have enough money, then that's your fault, and you're a failure or something, mostly because they don't understand how politics and economics actually work. Now, with Bernie Sanders, he came along, he's trying to be president, or he wanted to be president. So he was running for president. That's how you say that, to run for president. He was running for president until recently. I don't know why exactly, but he dropped out. I'll write that for you. He dropped out. To drop out is to just kind of not do it anymore, to quit. You could say quit. It's mostly only in two contexts. With a class at university that you can say, I don't want to take this class anymore, I'm going to drop out. Or drop out might mean the whole school. You can drop a class and drop out of school, university, whatever. In this case, you could say he dropped out of the race. The race. He dropped out of the race to be president, basically. You could say he was running for president, and he dropped out of the race. So you can see that with elections, we use this kind of running fast kind of metaphor with it. I don't really know why, but if you can remember that, then it'll help you to remember the words. But he dropped out of the race, which means he's not in the race anymore. And what he did is endorsed, again, a word that you will see in newspapers and so on, endorse, which means to support. Let's say to support, to say someone or something is good. He endorsed the biggest candidate right now in the Democratic Party. There's two major parties in the US. The Republican Party, that you could say that's Trump's party. Although they're very big parties, so whose party is it? That's harder to say. And the Democratic Party, who needs to put forward a candidate for president, someone who wants to be president. Bernie Sanders was running for president, but he dropped out and endorsed the guy who's now probably going to run in the election against Trump. His name is Joe Biden, and I might as well write that for you too, in case you didn't know. Maybe you've seen it and you didn't know how to pronounce it, or I don't know what. If you look at any English language newspaper nowadays, you'll probably see Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump. You'll see all those names, so you need to know who they are. Now, what it teaches us, this is, I think, a very important lesson that we should be learning, and I think you can learn it just as much as Americans and native English speakers. I think there was no chance Bernie was ever going to be president, Bernie Sanders. This guy, again, who's kind of left-wing. I think there was never a chance of him being president, because whenever, and this is probably true where you live just as much as anywhere else, but certainly in the United States, if you are even just a little bit to the left wing, I suppose it looks like I'm going to the right on here, but from my point of view, I'm going left. If you're even just a bit to the left, like Bernie is, every one of the really powerful people in the United States will be against you, because they're afraid that you'll take some of their wealth, some of their money, and some of their power, their influence on the government, or their influence on everything, let's say. And I don't think, and so when they see someone who is a threat to a danger to their money or whatever, then they do everything in their power to work against them. So they give lots of money to people like Joe Biden, and say, and in their newspapers or wherever they can talk, they talk about everything that's wrong with Bernie Sanders, everything that's bad and scary about his policies. We can't have Bernie Sanders because then there would be socialism. And in the United States especially, socialism is a very scary word. Socialism, it's a left-wing idea, a left-wing ideology. You might not know this word ideology. For now, let's say idea means an idea. And by its nature, it's very anti-capitalist. So, a capitalist system makes a few people very rich, and someone like Bernie Sanders says, well, you folks don't need to be so rich, do you? Can't we take some of that money and give it to hospitals? Give it to doctors and nurses, for example, just as an example. Give it to poor people, really. But they would say even that, even if it's like just give up a little bit of my wealth, they don't want to do it. They're against it. And so they use everything in their power to stop someone like Bernie Sanders from becoming president. And it works. It works every time someone like him comes along. He comes along and says, hey, I've got these great ideas. And then the people in power go, we'll have to kill those ideas then, I guess. Maybe by making them look scary and dangerous, um, all kinds of different ways, really, that they do. And because of that, because I've seen it happen many times before, every election, I never thought he would ever become president. I didn't think there was any chance he could become president. And so, and that's why I use the word paradox. It's a paradox. On the one, a paradox is kind of like something that kind of can't. Maybe when two things can't exist at the same time, but they do. Right. So, so let's see. I wonder if I can explain the word. It's a hard word, paradox, but it's a useful word. So maybe that it seems like it couldn't be true. How could that be true? But actually it is. Turns out it is true. And it goes against what people believe, right? Because Bernie's ideas and policies are so popular with people, or could be very popular, he never had a chance of becoming president. Do you see why it's a paradox? Because he's popular, he can't be president. You see? Now, of course, you would think that doesn't make sense because, the United States is a democracy, right? But democracy doesn't mean that the people get what they want. That's what they tell you it means, but that is not what it means anywhere in the world. What it means is it looks on the surface, it looks like people get what they want because they vote. And that's it. It looks like they get what they want. Maybe they can say what they want and they can complain when they don't get what they want. But they usually don't get what they want. It's very, very rare. And so someone who's a popular enough politician will, at some point, they might lose the race, or in this case, he didn't necessarily lose, but he dropped out, and he said this other guy, who's, by the way, who's almost the same as Trump in all kinds of ways. He's actually very much the same. Bernie endorsed that guy. He said, yeah, that guy, he's not perfect, but since I'm dropping out, vote for him. But what's the difference, really, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? Is there any real difference between them? Well, you could say that Trump has been president for 4 years, and it's been really bad. It's been a disaster, you could say. But you could also look at what Joe Biden has done and see that's quite a disaster too. Both of the two candidates favor things like wars, lots of prisons, strong borders, giving lots of money to rich people and taking it from the poor to give to the rich. All of their policies would do that. So, in the end, this election that's happening in November in the United States, to me, it will not be a very interesting one. Two different people who are actually almost the same, telling you why they're different from each other. I don't think they're very different. They seem the same. And so we call it democracy. We call it freedom of choice, but really all they can do is choose between two people who are almost the same. And who in no one's case is their first choice. No one, not many people, maybe some people on the right wing who really like Trump, but nobody else, their first choice is either of those two guys. But in a democracy, all you can do is one vote. There you go. I have a vote. Maybe what I want will happen. Probably not. And that's what democracy is made of. And in this, sorry, I keep saying and. Actually, if you're speaking, don't speak like me. Don't keep saying and. Finish your sentences. That's my advice. Where was I? Yeah, democracy is not. It's not all it's cracked up to be. In other words, it's not as good as people say it is. And it's really not about freedom. It's really just a way of making the people think that everything bad is their fault. It's your fault. You voted for that guy, so it must be your fault. No, sorry. It's the fault of the people who are doing the things they're doing. But when you say, oh, it's your fault for voting, then we fight each other. It's all your fault for doing that thing. No, it's your fault for doing that thing. Well, maybe it's someone else's fault. Maybe they're the ones who are actually doing the thing, who are actually causing problems. And in a democracy, really, it just means that there's very strong propaganda. Do you know the word propaganda? It's a tough word. Propaganda means that's tough. You should probably watch my video on propaganda to really understand it. But it's the kind of the lies and the way people at the top want the rest of us to think. And democracy has just as much propaganda as any other kind of system, because it still has, rich people and poor people, and the rich people are deciding what the poor people believe. They make that decision. They make that choice. And people really, that's, most people don't think outside that propaganda because they can't. Now, in the case of Bernie Sanders, I consider him an example of propaganda, because every time there's a new election, they tell you here is the person you should vote for if you're like this. So there's lots of people who like left-wing ideas, that could be called socialist, or to make people equal. A lot of people like those ideas. So here comes the political system to say, vote for this guy. Here's a guy who you can vote for. Have this guy. He's your hope. And then they go and do something like this. They drop out and say, they drop out of the race and say, oh yeah, all of you who liked my ideas, now you should vote for this other guy who doesn't share any of my ideas. And every time there's an election, there's this hope that comes with it. Ooh, I hope that guy wins, because that guy has ideas that I like. But then that person doesn't win, and you get disappointed, and you go, oh, because you get disappointed because you hope, right? Have hope. That will, if you don't get what you want, that will lead to disappointment. You get disappointed. Oh, I thought Bernie Sanders was going to win. Oh, well, now I'm disappointed, right? But if you realized that every election they're going to bring out somebody who looks good to you, then you realize that they're creating hope and giving it to you. They're sending you hope instead, so that you can keep believing in the system. You can say, well, sure, he didn't win, but maybe next time, or next time someone else can run. Yes, but it's really, really hard for someone with good ideas to actually win. In fact, maybe impossible. It might be impossible for someone like that to win an election. It's no different anywhere there's an election, really. I remember being in Egypt during their first election. It's all just a show, but we could call it an election. And there were presidential candidates running from all these different parties. So all the different kind of elements, all the different people, groups of people in Egyptian society had their person that they could see themselves in. You had the kind of right-wing rich types, but also the kind of bit left types. You had some of the more respected people from the last government, but you also have the new people, the Muslim Brotherhood types or the Salafi types. These are all just different groups, and there were candidates for every one of those different groups. And what happened with the election? Well, they elected the Muslim Brotherhood. The military made it really hard for them to actually do anything. And then a year later, the military said, okay, let's everybody rise up against the current government. And then they went into the offices of the Muslim Brotherhood and arrested them. And that was it. So, did the people have any choice? It looked like they chose. They say, oh, this is the person who got the most votes, so the people have chosen. But, who really wanted what actually happened? Pretty much nobody. You could say all those millions of people were in the streets saying that we're against the Muslim Brotherhood, so that showed that they didn't want them. But, nobody was saying suspend all elections forever, which is what the military have done. Oops. I really think that all elections will give you hope, but none of your hopes will ever be fulfilled, will ever be realized. All of your hopes will be dashed. You could say, yeah, your hopes. Let's write that down. Your hopes will be dashed. To dash your hopes. Dash. I think dash is when a boat breaks on the rocks and sinks. I think that's what dash means. But in this case, it's like you might have your hopes here. They'll give you hopes, but then they'll also smash the hopes into the ground. And I really think all hope for freedom or rights or anything else that you want from the political system, all those hopes will be dashed at some point. And I don't think hope is very healthy. There's different kinds of hope, but if you're hoping for something that's just not realistic, then I don't think hope is very useful to you. Like if you were hoping, like you could hope to knock down a strong wall by hitting it. You can hope that, but there's no chance you'll succeed. And it's the same with the political system. You can hope that the government will give money to hospitals and schools and libraries and everything you believe in, but it's not going to, unless maybe it might if you can force it to. But that doesn't happen very often. It's impossible to force them, because even if you do force like a new policy or something, 6 months later they can just reverse the policy, because 6 months later you're no longer in the streets, you're no longer as angry as you were 6 months before. So 6 months later, okay, let's pass this law that everyone was angry at. Let's just pass it anyway. And that happens. It happens all the time. Every time, really, lots of people cry out against some law or some practice by the government. 6 months later, they just try a different way of implementing, of doing the same policy. So really, if your hopes are in the political system, I think you're wasting your hope. We can talk later, of course, about what you can do instead of hoping for change from a system that won't let you change. In fact, I'd like to talk about that on Thursday. But for now, that's really all I wanted to say. So now you know a bit about the biggest news, at least in the English-speaking world, let's say, in the native English speaker world in North America and Britain. Probably the biggest news is about Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And what it comes down to in the end is probably the election this year will be between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Two terrible people. So, any hopes? I certainly don't have any. Not in the political system. But there are still reasons to hope for other things. For now, that's all I'm going to say. So thanks everyone for watching this. And great. I hope to join you again, maybe on Thursday or Friday. Either way, have a good day, and I'll see you later.